Okay, good morning. First of all, I just want to thank the organizers for all of their work on this incredible conference, and I just also want to thank you for inviting me. And so I'm just going to get right into it. I'm just going to tell you basically what my experience was at Harvard. I lost a career I loved a couple of years ago, and I am still in recovery. And I'm going to use my experience about what happened at Harvard as a kind of case study about how intimidation at best and censorship at worst in the sciences can happen. And the bottom line, in case I run out of time, which I think I probably will, it wasn't about truth, science, or formal sanctions in my case. But everything to do with power dynamics, fear, and cowardice in a culture in which the values of veritas and academic freedom are, I'm probably going to cry at some point, like right now. The values of veritas and academic freedom are subjugated to those of DEI, where protecting ostensibly vulnerable parties reigns supreme. I'd like to try to tie together some of the themes that have come out during this conference to help us think about solutions, although at this point, I am not optimistic. I would like to leave here feeling more optimistic. What time did I start? Sorry, 10, okay, 10, I'll just say 10:03. Okay, and my apologies for those of you who have heard my story and are hearing it now for the umpteenth time. But for those of you who are not familiar, which maybe most of you with my case, a bit of background. I did a PhD in human evolutionary biology, which was biological anthropology at the time, at Harvard on testosterone and sex differences in spatial ability. Like I actually had people come into the lab and drool into test tubes. As a grad student, I loved teaching, but not publishing. So in 2004, the ending of the Larry Summers era. Most of you probably know what that is about. He was the president of Harvard. I became Dr. Hooven, and this was in my mid-30s, so this was a career change for me. And I stayed on as kind of a permanent lecturer in human evolutionary biology. So this part is key. This was a non-tenure track position, largely teaching and advising undergrads. Little to no research. I attended faculty meetings but couldn't vote. Essentially, I was in a service position, bottom of the faculty totem pole, and I felt incredibly lucky to be there and worked my ass off, I have to say. And as far as my reputation prior to the debacle, I'd won many teaching and advising awards, and if anything, was known for caring a little too much about my students. Okay, so the clicker, great. Okay, so what I'm showing you is a slide from my hormones and behavior lecture class, and this was a very popular course. It was almost always the largest course in the department. And I want to start with an email I received from a student in that course in 2017. I want to illustrate what it was like for me then and how it should be and was not in 2021. So this is a picture of an individual who has congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is a female, and I use this to introduce the steroid production pathway, which otherwise is extremely dry and boring. But this is an incredible illustration of what happens when there's a mutation in a gene that codes for an enzyme that's necessary to produce the typical hormones in fetal development. If that gene isn't working, if that enzyme isn't working, you can get a very masculinized female. So it's essential that I use correct sex terms to describe the case. Here is the email, part of the email. Hi, Professor Hooven. Today in class, when teaching about congenital adrenal hyperplasia, you told us that this child feels like a guy. However, you spent the entire class time referring to this child as she, her, and specifically called this child a girl at least once. If this were to occur to a student, where am I? That would almost certainly fall under Harvard's policy against gender-based harassment. I do not understand why you would spend so much of the lecture intentionally misgendering a child whom you know to identify as a guy. I felt very nervous and worried at the end of the lecture. I had never received anything like this before. I was a upset about it because I don't want to hurt any students. And I forwarded the email to my department chair and co-director of undergraduate studies, with whom I worked closely for many years. He's a well-known person in my department. He was also a friend, and he ended up playing a starring role in my downfall a few years later. Oi, sorry about this. Of all people, you are one of the most considerate on the planet regarding these kinds of issues. Happy to chat. Don't take this too personally. Great. I had the support of the most important person in my department. I had full support. I forwarded it to the Title IX coordinator and had a phone conversation with her, and that also went very well. Her response, thank you for speaking with me about this and for your very thoughtful approach to it all. Okay, great. I felt valued and supported and like I could do whatever I wanted as an instructor, and that felt incredible because other people were feeling nervous about what they were teaching, and I knew that. Jumping forward to 2021, after George Floyd, this is still up on our genetics lab, and you can just read that. DEI intensified. This is the first thing you see when you go to the lab website, particularly in the department. And at the same time, there was an internal task force established, as there was in many other departments at Harvard and in most universities. There's not only a central DEI administrative structure, but there are also internal DEI groups within departments that monitor what is going on in the department, and typically, as in our department, have buy-in from faculty and administrators. There's logistical and financial support to these groups, and they have a huge amount of influence in the department, and it seems like the tenured faculty kowtow a lot of the time to the complaints of the people who are on the DEI committees. I'm going to call Lisa, who happened to be a Black woman, which turned out to matter a lot. She was the graduate student director of that task force. So that summer, in the summer of 2021, my book called The Story of Testosterone, the Hormone That Divides Us, was published. It got rave reviews and was praised as talking about trans issues in particular, as being very sensitive and compassionate. The book was published. I appeared on Fox and Friends, and I'm not going to go into why, since I'm probably already running out of time. And I talked about, tell me when I have like 2 minutes, talked about the biology of sex, which is the hill that I would die on, did die on, or part of me died on. And here's what I said that got me into trouble. The facts are that there are two sexes. This is my first TV appearance, so it just wasn't perfect. Okay. The facts are that there are two sexes. There are male and female, and those sexes are designated by the kinds of gametes we produce. The ideology seems to be that biology really isn't as important as somebody feels about themselves or feels their sex to be, but we can treat everybody with respect and respect their gender identities and use their preferred pronouns. So understanding the facts about biology doesn't prevent us from treating people with respect. This did not go over well with the director of our task force, who tweeted this as the director. So here, the key here is that she represented herself as speaking on behalf of the university and my department in some sort of official administrative position. And that is how it was perceived to the rest of the world. As the director of the Diversity Inclusion Task Force, blah, 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 I am appalled and frustrated by the transphobic and harmful remarks made by a member of my department in this interview with Fox and Friends. I was alerted to this. Sorry, this is like still painful to talk about, because everything was fine up until this. I was alerted to this by a friend of mine, and I freaked out a little bit and just had a couple thousand followers on Twitter at the time, but she did me a huge favor because my followers like really jacked up at that point. So I just want you to note the theme here, which is vague accusations of harm and character assassination. Nothing to do with veritas or truth or the facts, but I am causing harm. So it no longer becomes a debate or about truth or science. It becomes about the fact that somebody is being harmed, and very seriously, by me, the bad actor. Okay, so headlines, there was just more sort of description in her tweets about the harm that I was causing. And ultimately, sorry, I'm just gonna whiz through this. You can just look on Twitter, it's still up there. I just asked her nicely, can we have a conversation? And this is just an example of some of the backlash from James Lindsay that she received. People were all over her because what she did was, in fact, outrageous. However, there was a strong minority who felt that this was totally unfair to her, that I was punching down, and that she kept tweeting back like she's huddling in her apartment trying to keep herself safe from all this abuse that I caused by unleashing my transphobic mob on her. Okay, so this blew up. It was all over newspapers all over the world, Australia, New York, UK. It just got a huge amount of attention, and this was not good for me on campus. Great, maybe James Lindsay et al. Supported me on Twitter, but on campus, I was a horrible human being. I went to having a stellar reputation after 20 years of investment in Harvard University to literally walking with my head down. It was awful. How much more do I have? Like 1 minute.
6 minutes.
Oh, 6 minutes? Is that too much? No, it's great. Okay. Okay. So what happened then, so you have to understand this person, Lisa, had a huge amount of power in the department. People were afraid of her and what she would say on social media, and she seemed to have a large amount of influence over all of the grad students. She was, in fact, our only Black graduate student, and she was the director of the DEI task force. So then what happened is the Graduate Student Union published what was basically a petition against me in the Harvard Crimson, and accusing me of bringing racist abuse. So not only was I transphobic, I was now bringing racist abuse, which is the worst thing possible, and death threats, apparently, which there was no evidence ever provided of that, upon Lisa. And they okay, I don't have evidence that they actually boycotted, but I had this big lecture. I needed a bunch of TFs or few teaching fellow assistants to run my class. They refused to teach for me, and since I didn't have any status, I didn't have a lab, I didn't have like automatic grad students for my course, but I never had a problem getting teaching fellows for my course, could not teach my class, had to, my last class I taught was a seminar, and it was actually great. The undergrads were amazing. Another thing happened where I was gonna give a talk. I'm just gonna go through this really quickly. With Dan Gilbert, who's a social psychologist who was very, very helpful to me. He did host it, but a trans woman grad student in another biology department complained about me. She was on their DIB committee, and the department chair circulated her complaints with a forward. The department chair to hundreds of people on the listserv. This was after all this other stuff happened in my own department. I was already feeling distressed, depressed, freaked out, and then this second thing happened. Then I started demanding action from anyone at Harvard, Claudine Gay, Dean of Faculty at the time, the Dean of Science, my own chair, my co-director of undergraduate studies. I was told directly to put my head down, and I was getting very depressed at this point. Put my head down, grit my teeth, and be professional. No one said a word. No one wrote a letter like they wrote in 2017 about my right to teach as I see fit, not even an email to me saying, we support you. They knew I was on the verge of leaving, and the chair of the department suggested I do so. He was that's a complicated situation. I think he was trying to be supportive somehow. That co-director of undergraduate studies, who I was a close friend, shunned me, stopped speaking to me. No one supported me who had any administrative power supported me publicly. And I knew I could not continue to work in that department. I was unable to teach, for one thing. Okay, great. So This, I don't know, I think it's still up. I'm not sure. Harvard changed some of its websites, but this was under its mission. Nothing to do with Veritas or Truth, all to do with protecting harmed parties. Veritas is etched in stone. That's where it is. What we get in the current, at least when I was still there, the environment was DEI, DEI, DEI. If anything looks weird, report it. If anyone offends you, report it. Go to the administration if you feel harmed, et cetera, et cetera. Those are messages that were in our face. There was never anything about academic freedom, truth-seeking, engagement across disagreement, et cetera. It was all seemed to be about harm. So what I just want to end with, so I should just say I ended up retiring. I literally am still recovering. I was just completely shocked. I lost trust in so many people. I lost friends. I'm so happy to be here. And disagreeable, awesome people, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Michael, disagreeableness is where it's at. Jerry, that's also for you. Okay, whatever. So I want to say that partly in response to my case, Harvard, Steve Pinker, Jeff Flyer, Ned Hall, some other people established Flynn Craddy, the Council on Academic Freedom at Harvard, which is amazing, and I'm an active member of it, and they've already had 2 big accomplishments. They don't get all of the credit, but I think they had a lot to do with it, and that is the adoption of institutional neutrality and the abolition of mandatory DEI statements. And I just want to get out really quickly. I think we should have a consortium of academic freedom councils and all be in communication with each other. We have a listserv among faculty that is one of the most interesting intellectual experiences I have ever had, debating these issues as they come up in real time with some of the most brilliant minds who all care about academic freedom. I strongly suggest that anyone do that, try to get something like that off the ground in their university. You can check out our website and all the things that we've done. And they've been a huge support to me, and they're there to also to try to ensure that other cases like mine never happen again. All right.